I spent 5 long grinding years in Japan. 5 years of welding steel beams in freezing warehouses, living in a cramped apartment the size of a closet, missing every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday. The work was brutal. My hands stayed raw from the heat, my lungs filled with metal dust, and the noise of grinding machinery never left my ears even when I tried to sleep. But I endured it all for one reason: to save enough money to buy my mother a house and give my family a better life. Every month, I wired $1,000 home to my mother, Eleanor Bennett. Every month, I told myself it would all be worth it when I finally came back. When my plane finally touched down at Los Angeles International Airport, my heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed my single battered suitcase from baggage claim and rushed outside into the California sun. The warmth hit my face after years of Japanese winters, and I closed my eyes for just a moment, breathing in the familiar smell of car exhaust and ocean salt. Home. I was finally home. I hailed a taxi and gave the driver the address of the house I'd purchased 3 years ago with my hard-earned savings. The whole ride, I couldn't stop smiling. I'd bought that house remotely, working with a real estate agent over video calls, signing documents electronically, all so Mom would have a safe place to live. She'd moved in 2 years ago, and I'd been sending money ever since to help with expenses. The taxi turned onto the familiar tree-lined street, and the house came into view at the end of the block. My chest swelled with emotion, but as we got closer, something made my smile falter. The first thing I noticed was the lock. Not the old rusty padlock that Mom had used on her previous rental, the kind she'd told me about during our calls. This was a sleek electronic keypad with glowing blue numbers. My mother, Eleanor Bennett, was terrified of technology. She still wrote her grocery lists on paper with a pencil, and had once accidentally called 911 because she pressed the wrong button on her phone. There was no way she would have chosen to install something like this. I paid the driver and stepped out onto the sidewalk, staring at the house. Security cameras, 4 of them, mounted on the corners of the roof, slowly panning back and forth. The lenses glinted in the afternoon sun. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I walked up to the gate and pressed the doorbell. The chime echoed from inside. I waited, shifting my weight from foot to foot, listening for footsteps. Finally, I heard movement. The door swung open, but it wasn't my mother standing there. It was Brandon. My younger brother, Brandon Bennett, 28 years old, wearing a faded band t-shirt and sweatpants. The moment our eyes met, I saw it. Just for a split second, genuine shock flickered across his face. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened slightly, and his whole body went rigid. Then, just as quickly, he rearranged his expression into a smile that was too fast, too forced, stretched too wide. "Lucas?" His voice came out higher than normal. "You're early. I thought you weren't coming until next month." I hadn't told him when I was coming. Before I could respond, Brandon lunged forward and wrapped me in a hug that was aggressive, almost violent. He slapped my back hard enough to hurt. "Oh man, it's so good to see you, big brother. Come in, come in." Brandon and I had never been the hugging type. This sudden physical affection set off alarm bells in my head. I stepped into the house and froze. The living room looked like it belonged to someone else. Expensive black leather couches that still had tags hanging off the arms. A massive flat-screen television dominated the wall. Designer shoes lined up by the door. Track lighting in the ceiling. Everything screamed money and youth and luxury. Nothing about it screamed Eleanor Bennett. Stephanie, Brandon's wife, was draped across one of the leather couches with her phone in her hand. She was 27, thin, wearing a silk robe even though it was 2 in the afternoon. When she glanced up at me, her expression was utterly flat, almost bored. "Oh, Lucas. Hi." She didn't get up, just looked back down at her phone. "What happened to the house?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Brandon laughed, waving his hand. "Yeah, we updated some things. It needed it, you know? Don't worry, Mom loves it." That was a lie. I knew it was a lie. "Where's Mom?" My voice came out harder than I intended. "I came here to see her." Brandon and Stephanie exchanged a look. Quick, barely a second, but I caught it. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Then Brandon's smile widened again. "She's in the kitchen. She's doing great, don't worry. We've been taking really good care of her." "Taking care of her? What does that mean?" "She's gotten weaker over the years. more forgetful. We were worried about her living alone after she moved into this house, so Stephanie and I moved in about 2 years ago to help out. Make sure she eats right, takes her medications, stuff like that. Mom was really happy to have us here. My chest tightened. Mom had never mentioned any of this during our video calls. Every week for 5 years, I'd called her on Sunday mornings. She always said the same things. She was fine. The house was fine. Don't worry. But now that I thought about it, those calls had always been short, and I'd never seen much of the house in the background. She'd position the camera to show just her face against a plain wall. "Where is she?" I asked again. "I want to see her." "Kitchen," Stephanie said without looking up. "She's probably making dinner or something." I walked past them, through the living room, my footsteps heavy on the new hardwood floors. I pushed open the kitchen door and stopped dead. My mother was standing at the sink, washing dishes. But this wasn't the mother I remembered. Eleanor Bennett had always been a strong woman, sturdy and full of energy despite her 58 years. She'd worked in a textile factory for 20 years, raised 2 boys on her own after Dad died in a workplace accident when I was 12. But the woman standing at the sink looked like a shadow of her. She was wearing an old gray apron, the kind she used only for heavy cleaning. Her clothes underneath were faded and worn. She'd lost weight. A lot of weight. Her shoulders were hunched, her spine curved. Her hands trembled as she scrubbed a plate, and I could see how thin her wrists had become. Her hair, which had always been carefully styled, was now completely gray and pulled back in a limp ponytail. The harsh kitchen light showed every line on her face, every hollow in her cheeks. She looked like she'd aged 15 years instead of 5. "Mom?" My voice came out rough, barely more than a whisper. She turned slowly. When her eyes met mine, there was a moment where she just stared, like she didn't recognize me. Then something sparked, and her lips trembled into a weak smile. "Lucas? My son. You're home." She said it like she didn't quite believe it. I crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug. But instead of hugging me back, she went stiff. Her whole body tensed up. When I pulled back to look at her face, I saw fear. Real, genuine fear flickering in her eyes. Her gaze darted past me toward the living room where Brandon and Stephanie were. She glanced at the doorway like she was checking to see if they were watching. "I missed you," she said quietly. Too quietly. "I'm so glad you're home." But her hands were shaking, and she wouldn't look at me directly. My mother was terrified. I could feel it radiating off her. She was scared in her own kitchen, in her own home. "Mom, are you okay? How have you been?" Before she could answer, I heard footsteps. Brandon appeared in the doorway, still wearing that too wide smile. "Hey, Mom's pretty tired these days. She should probably rest soon. Right, Mom?" Eleanor immediately dropped her gaze to the floor. "Yes, I should rest." "Let me help you clean up," I said, reaching for a dish towel. "No need," Stephanie's voice called from the living room. "Eleanor's got it. She likes to stay busy." My mother nodded quickly. Too quickly. "Yes, I like to stay busy." I stood there watching my mother scrub dishes with trembling hands while my brother and his wife controlled every word that came out of her mouth, and I felt rage start to build in my gut. But I also felt fear. If I confronted them now, I didn't know what would happen to Mom after I left. I needed to be smart. I needed proof. "Okay, I'm pretty tired from the flight. I think I'm going to head to a motel and get some rest. But I'll come back tomorrow." The relief on Brandon's face was immediate. His shoulders dropped. "Yeah, that sounds good. There's a decent place a few miles down the road." I said goodbye to Mom, who barely looked at me, and walked out. But I didn't go far. I drove 3 blocks, parked at a gas station, and sat there with my hands gripping the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. The electronic locks, the cameras, Brandon's reaction, the way Mom had flinched, the weight she'd lost, the fear in her eyes. I checked into a rundown motel that night, the kind where the neon sign flickered and you could hear everything through the walls. But it was cheap and close. I lay on the lumpy bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. Why had everything changed so much? Why hadn't Mom told me what was happening? The next morning, I didn't go back. Instead, I parked 3 houses down, far enough that the cameras wouldn't catch me. At exactly 8 a.m., the front door opened. Brandon came out wearing gym clothes. He got in his car and drove off. I followed him. He didn't go to a gym. He went to a sports bar that had just opened. I watched through the window as he met up with 3 other guys, ordered a beer even though it wasn't even 9 a.m., and started watching a game. I drove back to the house. Through the living room window, I could see Stephanie on the couch with her phone. And then I saw Mom. She was carrying a vacuum cleaner, moving slowly like every step hurt. She bent down to plug it in and I saw her wince, one hand going to her lower back. She was in pain. And Stephanie didn't even look up. I sat in that car and watched for 3 hours. I watched my mother clean the entire house, cook lunch, wash dishes, fold laundry. I watched Stephanie give her orders without ever getting off that couch. I watched Mom move through her own home like a servant. That afternoon, I found what I was looking for. A small office with a simple sign, Anderson Investigations. I pushed open the door and found a man in his 40s with tired eyes and a rumpled shirt. Help you? I need to hire a private investigator. My brother is doing something to my mother. I need proof. His name was Tyler Anderson, former cop specialized in elder abuse and financial fraud. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes. Everything you are describing fits a pattern I've seen before. Isolation, control, fear responses. How much money have you been sending home? $1,000 a month for 5 years. $60,000 total. Tyler's expression darkened. And do you know if your mother still has access to that money? I realized I didn't. I need you to find out what's happening. I need documentation, evidence, whatever it takes. He quoted me $500 a day plus expenses. I wrote him a check for the first week. I'll start surveillance tonight, and I'll pull financial records, property records, anything I can access legally. The next 4 days were torture. I stayed away from the house while Tyler worked. He sent me photos. Brandon leaving every morning to go to bars or casinos. Stephanie shopping with bags from expensive stores. Mom working constantly, always working. Each photo made the anger burn hotter. On the 5th day, Tyler called. I've got something. You need to come to my office. When I walked in, Tyler had papers spread across his desk. His face was grim. Your mother's bank account has been systematically drained. Every month for the past 5 years, withdrawals have been made. The account that should have $60,000 has less than $900. I felt the blood drain from my face. Where did it go? He turned his laptop toward me. Cash withdrawals, payments to Royal Flush Casino, transfers to an account in Brandon and Stephanie's names, charges at jewelry stores, clothing boutiques, expensive restaurants. None of it was anything my mother would spend money on. I traced the secondary account. They've been transferring your mother's money and spending it on gambling, luxury goods, paying off debts. I also found this. He slid a document across. Power of attorney, allegedly signed by your mother, giving Brandon authority over her finances. Look at the signature. The signature was shaky, uncertain, nothing like her usual handwriting. I think this is forged, or signed under duress. What else? Tyler pulled up another document. I placed a recording device on the exterior window ledge of the living room. You authorized this as her son with concerns about her welfare. Under California law, this is legal because you have authority to protect her interests. What I recorded yesterday is going to make you very angry. He clicked play. Brandon's voice came through clearly. When are you finishing the title transfer for the house? Stephanie's voice. Soon. The notary said Eleanor's signature on the power of attorney looks good enough. We just need her to sign one more document. Brandon. Good. We need to move fast. Lucas is back, and if he starts asking questions, this whole thing falls apart. Stephanie. Don't worry. She's so doped up on those pills she barely knows what day it is. We'll have her sign whatever we need. Brandon. How much do you think we can get for the house? Stephanie. The realtor said at least $400,000, maybe more. We pay off the loan sharks, take care of the gambling debts, and still have enough left over to start somewhere new. Brandon laughed. Mom's not going to know what hit her. By the time she figures out the house is gone, we'll be in another state. The recording ended. I sat there staring at the laptop, blood roaring in my ears. They were planning to steal my mother's house. They were going to forge her signature, sell it, take the money, and disappear. And they were drugging her to keep her compliant. What pills are they talking about? Tyler pulled out another document. I accessed her medical records with your authorization. There's no prescription for sedatives or any medication that would cause cognitive impairment. Whatever they're giving her isn't coming from a legitimate doctor. They're likely buying it illegally. How do we stop them? We go to the police with everything: the forged power of attorney, the financial fraud, the audio recording. We get a restraining order and get her to a hospital to find out what they've been giving her. I stood up. Let's do it. Now. There's something else you need to see first. He turned his laptop and pulled up a video file. The timestamp showed last night around 11 p.m. The video was shot through the kitchen window. Mom was there, carrying a tray. She was moving unsteadily. As I watched, her legs buckled. She dropped the tray, dishes crashing to the floor, and she collapsed. For a few seconds, she just lay there. Then Stephanie came into frame, and she kicked my mother, hard. Mom's body jerked from the impact. Stephanie was screaming, though there was no audio. She kicked her again, and again. My mother curled into a ball, trying to protect herself. Then Brandon appeared. For a split second, I thought he'd intervene, but he didn't. He stood there and watched while Stephanie kicked my mother like she was a dog. I realized I was crying. Hot tears ran down my face. Tyler shut the laptop gently. That's assault. Physical elder abuse. With this video, the audio recording, and the financial evidence, we have an airtight case. I need to get her out of there, tonight. The police can execute a wellness check. No, I'm getting her out, right now. Tyler must have seen something in my face because he didn't argue. At least let me come as a witness. We drove to the house together. It was just after 7 p.m. I parked on the street and walked up to the front door. This time, I didn't ring the bell. I knocked hard, 3 solid bangs. After a moment, the door opened. Stephanie stood there in a bathrobe, wine glass in hand, looking annoyed. "Lucas, what do you want?" "I want to see my mother. She's resting. Come back tomorrow." "No, I want to see her now." Something in my tone warned her. Her expression changed from annoyance to wariness. "She's not feeling well. Get out of my way, Stephanie." She didn't move. Behind her, Brandon got up from the couch. "Hey, bro, what's the problem? I know what you've been doing. I know about the money. I know about the pills. I know about your plan to steal the house. And I know you've been beating her." The color drained from both their faces. Then Brandon tried to recover, forcing a laugh. "What are you talking about? You sound crazy." "Move," I said to Stephanie, "or I'll move you myself." She backed up. I pushed past her. Tyler stayed by the door, his phone out, recording everything. Brandon tried to step in front of me, but I shoved him aside. I went straight to the small bedroom at the back of the house. When I opened the door, I found her. My mother was lying on a narrow cot, curled up under a thin blanket. The room was barely furnished. No dresser, no pictures, just the cot and a small lamp. This was where they'd moved her, into the smallest, coldest room. Mom, it's Lucas. Wake up." She stirred, blinking slowly. Her eyes were unfocused, pupils dilated. "Lucas, why are you here?" She was so confused she couldn't tell reality from a dream. I knelt beside the cot and took her hand. "I'm here in person, Mom. I'm going to take you somewhere safe." "Safe?" She looked around. "I am safe. Brandon takes care of me." "No, Mom. He doesn't. He's been hurting you." Tears started rolling down her face. Behind me, Brandon and Stephanie appeared in the doorway. "Lucas, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "I'm taking my mother to the hospital, and then I'm going to the police with evidence of everything you've done." "Evidence?" Stephanie laughed, shrill and panicked. "You don't have any evidence." I pulled out my phone and played the audio recording. Their voices filled the room, talking about transferring the house and drugging Mom and taking the money. I watched the blood drain from their faces. "That's illegal," Stephanie said. "You can't record people without consent." "Actually, under California law, I can. Tyler Anderson is a licensed investigator acting with my authorization to protect my mother's interests. Everything he recorded is admissible, and he's standing in your living room right now recording this entire conversation." Brandon's hands curled into fists. "You son of—" He lunged at me. I sidestepped and drove my fist into his stomach. He doubled over, and I shoved him backward. He crashed into Stephanie, and they both went down. Don't give me an excuse. I turned back to my mother and helped her to her feet. She was shaking, confused. Lucas, what are you doing? They're going to be angry. They're never going to touch you again. I wrapped her in the blanket and guided her out. Tyler had captured everything. Brandon and Stephanie climbed to their feet but didn't try to stop us. I walked my mother out into the evening air, put her in my car, and drove straight to the emergency room at Mercy General Hospital. The nurses took her immediately when I explained she'd been poisoned and abused. They rushed her through double doors while a nurse stayed behind to get information. I told her everything. The nurse's expression grew more horrified with every sentence. She assured me they'd run a full toxicology panel and keep my mother admitted. Then I sat in the waiting room and let myself fall apart. Hours passed. Finally, around 2 in the morning, a doctor came out. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes. Mr. Bennett, I'm Dr. Patricia Hoffman. I've been treating your mother. I stood up. Is she okay? Your mother is stable, severely malnourished and dehydrated. She has bruising consistent with physical trauma, but more alarmingly, her blood shows high residual levels of benzodiazepines, sedatives administered continuously over an extended period. They cause memory loss, confusion, physical weakness. If this had continued, she could have suffered permanent neurological damage, organ failure, even death. You brought her in just in time. I collapsed into a chair. They'd been poisoning her, slowly killing her so she'd be too confused to resist. How long until she's better? The drugs will clear within days. Physical recovery will take weeks. Psychological impact is harder to predict. She'll need therapy and support. But Mr. Bennett, you saved her life. I followed Dr. Hoffman to a private room. My mother looked so small in that hospital bed, hooked up to IV lines and monitors. But her face was peaceful. No tension, no fear. Just sleep. I pulled a chair beside the bed and took her hand. I sat there all night, watching her breathe, silently promising I would fix this. The next morning, I called Tyler. He'd already filed a report with the police. Detectives were reviewing all the evidence. With the hospital's medical documentation, the video, the audio recording, and the financial records, they had more than enough for charges. Brandon and Stephanie were brought in for questioning that afternoon. When detectives played the recordings and showed them the video, they went quiet. Their lawyer told them not to say anything. They were released pending formal charges, but a judge issued an emergency restraining order keeping them 500 feet away from my mother. Over the next few days, Mom slowly came back to herself. The fog lifted from her eyes. Her speech became clearer. On the third day, when doctors were confident she was stable, I sat beside her bed and gently asked her to tell me everything. She cried so hard I thought she might break. But she told me the whole story. How Brandon and Stephanie had shown up about 2 years ago, shortly after she moved into the house, claiming they needed a place to stay temporarily. How she'd been happy to have them at first. How they'd been sweet and helpful for the first few months. Then things changed. They started asking for money. Small amounts at first. When she hesitated, they got angry. They accused her of being selfish. The verbal abuse escalated. They started calling her names, telling her she was useless and a burden. They made her cook all their meals and clean the entire house. When she did something they didn't like, they punished her. Sometimes they'd lock her in her room for hours. Sometimes they'd take away her food. Then the pills started. Stephanie told her they were vitamins to help her memory. Mom trusted them. Almost immediately, she started feeling foggy, confused, exhausted. Her memory became unreliable. She tried to tell them the pills were making her sick, but they insisted she needed them. When she tried to refuse, they forced them down her throat. After a while, she stopped fighting. They took over her finances completely. They said she was too confused to manage money, that they'd handle it. They made her sign documents she didn't understand. They spent every dollar. I sent home on gambling, shopping, expensive dinners. They ran up her credit cards, and when I called on Sundays, they made sure she couldn't tell me. They'd stand right there in the room, watching her, making sure she said the right things. The camera was always positioned, so I couldn't see them standing behind it. If she tried to hint at the truth, they'd punish her later. Lock her in her room, scream at her, hit her. The physical abuse got worse. Stephanie would slap her for dropping a dish, shove her into walls, kick her when she was on the floor. Brandon participated too, though he usually watched. Mom thought about reaching out to neighbors, but they'd taken her phone away. They monitored her every movement with those cameras. They convinced her that no one would believe her anyway, that people would think she was senile. They told her they'd put her in a nursing home where she'd be abused worse. So she stayed quiet and endured it, believing she had no choice. "I'm so sorry, Lucas," she sobbed. "I wanted to scream for help every time we talked, but I was so scared and so confused. I thought maybe I deserved it." I held her while she cried. "None of this is your fault, not one bit. They're criminals, and they're going to pay." Over the next week, I barely left her side. I helped her eat, walked with her around the hospital floor to rebuild her strength, talked to her, reminded her of good memories. Slowly, I watched my mother come back to life. The fear faded. Her hands stopped shaking. She started smiling again. While Mom recovered, I met with lawyers. Tyler introduced me to David Reed, a criminal defense attorney who specialized in elder abuse cases. David was sharp-eyed and serious, with a reputation for being ruthless in court. He reviewed all the evidence and told me we had one of the strongest cases he'd ever seen. They're looking at serious prison time. Wire fraud, elder abuse, assault, theft, forgery? We're talking 15 to 25 years. No plea deal, I said. I want them to face every single charge. Then we go to trial. But I need to warn you, your mother will have to testify. She'll have to relive everything in front of strangers. Defense attorneys will try to make her look unreliable. Are you sure she's strong enough? I thought about my mother, how she'd survived years of abuse and poisoning. She's the strongest person I know. David filed the formal criminal complaint the next day. Conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, assault and battery, theft over $50,000, forgery, illegal administration of controlled substances. Brandon and Stephanie were arrested within 48 hours. No bail because they were considered flight risks. They'd have to sit in county jail until trial. The weeks passed. Mom was discharged and came to stay with me at a small apartment I'd rented. I'd given up any thought of going back to Japan. The only thing that mattered was taking care of my mother and making sure justice was served. We fell into a routine. I'd make her breakfast. We'd go for walks. She started therapy twice a week. Slowly, the wounds started to heal. She gained weight. Color came back to her cheeks. She laughed at jokes. She started talking about the future. It took 8 months for the case to go to court. Brandon and Stephanie stayed in jail the whole time. Their public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal. David refused. They had their chance. Now we're taking this to trial. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The courtroom was packed every day. Local news covered it. I sat in the front row with Mom every single day. Brandon and Stephanie were let in wearing orange jumpsuits and shackles. They looked destroyed. They wouldn't look at us. Not once. The prosecution laid out the case methodically. They played the audio recording. The jury gasped. They showed the bank records. They presented the medical evidence. They showed the video of Stephanie kicking my mother. 2 jurors cried. Mom took the stand on day 5. She looked small up there, but her voice was steady. She told them everything. The abuse, the drugging, the theft, the fear. The courtroom was silent. When it was the defense's turn, Brandon's lawyer tried to claim gambling addiction had driven him to desperate measures. The jury didn't buy it. Stephanie's lawyer tried to shift blame to Brandon, but the video destroyed that defense. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the foreman read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Every single charge. Brandon put his head in his hands. Stephanie stared straight ahead. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Margaret Chen. When it came time to pass sentence, she didn't hold back. "Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Bennett, in my 30 years on this bench, I have seen many cases of elder abuse, but few have been as calculated, as cruel, and as utterly devoid of humanity as this one. You targeted the person who loved you most. You exploited her trust, destroyed her health, stole her security. The psychological damage you inflicted may never fully heal. The court finds that the maximum sentence is not only appropriate but necessary." She sentenced Brandon to 18 years in federal prison. Conspiracy to defraud, 5 years. Elder abuse, 8 years. Forgery, 3 years. Illegal drug administration, 2 years. All consecutive. Stephanie received 22 years. The same charges plus an additional 4 years for the physical assault captured on video, which the court found particularly heinous. Both were ordered to pay full restitution of $260,000. Every asset they had was seized. They were also given lifetime restraining orders. Even after release, they could never contact Eleanor Bennett again. The gavel came down. Brandon and Stephanie were led away in chains. They didn't look back. They just disappeared through a door and were gone. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. It's over. It's finally over. 6 months after the sentencing, I got a letter. Federal Correctional Institution, Victorville. Brandon's handwriting. I almost threw it away, but something made me open it. Lucas, I know I have no right to ask anything, but I'm begging you, please come visit me once. I need to say things to your face that I should have said years ago. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for 5 minutes. Your brother, Brandon. I showed it to Mom. She looked at it for a long time. Maybe you should go. Not for him. For you. So you can close this door completely. I resisted for 2 weeks, but eventually I made the drive to Victorville. It's a maximum security federal prison, all concrete and razor wire. I went through security and was led to a visitation room divided by thick plexiglass. I'd been added to Brandon's approved visitor list weeks earlier through the proper channels. I sat in the metal chair and waited. A door opened. Brandon walked in wearing an orange jumpsuit, wrists and ankles shackled. He looked like a ghost. His hair was shaved. His face was thin and pale. He had a scar over his left eye. Prison had marked him. He sat down and picked up the phone. I picked up mine. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Then he spoke, his voice cracking. Thank you for coming. I didn't think you would. I didn't say anything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. There's no excuse. I was weak and selfish and cruel. I destroyed Mom's life. I destroyed our family. I hate myself every day for it. Is that what you needed to tell me? That you're sorry? Because I don't care if you're sorry, Brandon. Sorry doesn't give Mom back the years you stole. Sorry doesn't undo the drugs you forced down her throat or the beating Stephanie gave her while you watched. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I need you to tell Mom that I love her, that I think about her every day, that I wish I could take it all back. I stood up. No. Brandon pressed his hand against the glass. Please, Lucas, please don't leave. I'm your brother. No, you're not. My brother died a long time ago. You're just a stranger wearing his face. I put the phone down. Brandon was screaming something, but I couldn't hear him anymore. I turned and walked away. Outside, I sat in my car for a long time, hands on the steering wheel. I didn't cry. I just felt done. That chapter was closed. Brandon could spend the next 18 years thinking about what he'd done. I had more important things to focus on. When I got back, Mom asked how it went. I told her the truth. He's not our family anymore. He's just someone we used to know. She nodded. She understood. We never spoke about Brandon again. Over the next few months, we focused on moving forward. The house was finally released back to us, but Mom didn't want to live there. Too many bad memories. So we sold it. The money from the sale, combined with the restitution, gave us enough to start fresh. We moved to a small coastal town called Cambria, about 3 hours north. It was quiet and peaceful. I bought a small cottage there. 2 bedrooms, white wood siding, a front porch with rocking chairs. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. And it was safe. No cameras, no electronic locks. Just a simple deadbolt and a screen door. Mom loved it immediately. The first thing she did was plant a garden. Roses, her favorite. She'd work the soil with her bare hands, humming while she planted. Watching her garden, seeing the smile on her face, was worth more than any revenge. I got a job at the local shipyard doing welding work. It didn't pay as much as Japan, but I didn't need as much. And more importantly, I came home every single night. Every evening at 5:30, I'd walk through that door and Mom would be in the kitchen. We'd eat together on the porch, watching the sunset. Mom's recovery was slow but steady. The first month, she still had nightmares. I'd wake up to hear her crying, and I'd sit with her until she fell back asleep. She was jumpy around strangers. But month by month, the fear faded. She started going out alone. She joined a book club at the library, made friends who didn't know anything about what she'd been through. A year after we moved to Cambria, we celebrated Mom's birthday. I took the day off and made her favorite breakfast. We walked along the beach, collecting shells. Mom found a perfect sand dollar and held it up to the light like it was treasure. We had lunch at a cafe overlooking the water. Mom ordered wine and laughed at the waitress's jokes. That afternoon, she worked in her garden while I read on the porch. Simple, ordinary, perfect. That evening, as the sun set, Mom came and sat beside me. She was dirty from gardening, her face flushed, but she looked more alive than I'd seen her in years. Thank you, Lucas, for coming home, for saving me, for giving me this life. You saved yourself, Mom. You survived until I could get there. We saved each other, and we built something new together, something good. She was right. Out of all that darkness, we'd built something good. A quiet life by the ocean, morning coffee and evening walks, a garden full of roses, simple dinners and shared laughter. It wasn't dramatic, but it was ours. And it was enough. Some families are broken beyond repair. Some betrayals cut so deep that forgiveness isn't possible, and healing requires severing the connection completely. Brandon and Stephanie made their choices. They'll spend the next 2 decades in prison, and when they get out, they'll be middle-aged with nothing. That's the price they're paying. Mom and I made different choices. We chose to let go of the anger, not because they deserved forgiveness, but because carrying rage would have poisoned our own lives. We chose to build something new instead of trying to repair what they'd destroyed. We chose each other. On quiet mornings now, I wake up to the sound of waves and the smell of coffee. I walk into the kitchen and find Mom making breakfast, humming while she cooks. She's gained back all the weight. Her hair is dyed back to that warm brown she always preferred. The trembling is gone. The fear is gone. She moves through the house with confidence, with joy. And when she sees me, she smiles. Really smiles. That's my revenge, not prison sentences or stolen money returned. My revenge is that she's happy. My revenge is that they failed to destroy her. My revenge is this life we've built, small and quiet and safe, where Mom plants roses and laughs and sleeps through the night without nightmares. They tried to take everything from her, and in the end, they took nothing that mattered, because she's still here, she's still strong, she's still mine, and I'm never leaving again.